I'm the Director of Photography for AMOR MIO, and this is my masterclass on how to make a storyboard. This is the first thing to note is this is a technical document. It does not need to look like an art piece. It just needs to convey what you want to have as your film, for what it wants to look like, and composition and key elements such as that. This is important because this is how you get your composition dialed in. Eye tracing is incredibly important. With each shot of your film, if the viewer's eye is in one corner of the image and then all of a sudden the next shot, the point of focus is the bottom left corner of the image, and you're cutting between these shots fairly quickly, you're going to lose track of where you're looking, and this can make it quite hard to focus and follow. For things like action sequences, this is incredibly important, so if you ever lost track of a fight or something, that can easily be why. So something like Mad Max, if you pay attention to Fury Road, everything in that film is centre framed, so the point of action will always remain perfectly in the middle, so it's very easy to follow even as much as there being lots going on in one scene. Another thing to note about Mad Max Fury Road is the entire film was pitched upon storyboards rather than a script, because the film was incredibly action focused. This isn't a very extreme case, however it is interesting to note that. One thing you want to know is the character's positioning and framing and the headroom, because all of these elements can really make a massive difference to the impact and the dramatic effect of the entire environment's feel of this film and this moment around these characters. If you have a character on the edge of the frame looking off frame, you're going to get very different feelings if someone's standing a lot higher than someone else where they've got much less headroom and someone else has a tiny bit of headroom. Another point is arrows are used throughout the film. You can see I've used an arrow here to show the doors opening. This can be fairly self-explanatory because of the fact that in the next images you can see the door is open. In other elements you might have arrows off the frame, and this is useful mostly for when there's things like camera movement you're trying to portray. So for example here I have a pan, however I've written above it pan. This isn't required, but it is useful in places where it's not so clear. And equally I wrote lean for this other character movement as well. Effectively there is no rule book for making a storyboard. It's purely about trying to convey what you want to convey and trying to make it as clear as possible in any distinct manner which is on paper. To start with, you will tend to start with a very rough storyboard which might look something like this. However, you can then go on to create better storyboards with a storyboard artist or such, or yourself if you're a good drawer. Likewise though, this is not required. You can have a bit of a middle ground because you can draw incredibly sketchy drawings, which is still just as useful as a fully fledged drawing. So here, this is something to note as well. So where these arrows are here, there are two drawn frames, which basically illustrates the fact that we're going to move from one frame to another with the camera movement. Once again, there's no particular actual approach to storyboarding, it is just about conveying what is going on in the scene. And equally, even if every shot is different, even if one shot is different to the last, you still need to draw the new frame again because it's still part of the storyboard, and this is effectively like editing in the storyboard. As you can see, these are getting sketchier, but it doesn't really matter because the detail's already been given in earlier shots. Here's one storyboard for an early scene which has been cut from our film. Here's how I decided to storyboard it. Obviously you can see it's incredibly basic, it's incredibly rough, but you can see there are arrows for camera movement and there are arrows for on-screen movement or the character movement effectively. Here there's also a zoom which is illustrated by 4 arrows in each corner of the screen. I've also got a 360-degree pan which has been cut, which is incredibly messily drawn, but if I'm explaining it to someone as I'm the director of photography, then they will understand what I mean. And equally, if this was to be a fully fledged storyboard, this would probably be drawn up slightly bigger, but however, this is one take, one shot. It is illustrated with numbers to help convey more simpler the direction of this shot's movement, and things like going over with fine liner can also be quite useful to make it more clear where the point of focus is or for specific elements. Another thing to note specifically is the use of shading. So in storyboarding you want to think about there being at least 3 different tones to your shot, and this way it's a lot clearer to explain points of focus. So for example this bell here is white and then the background is grey. Also the hammer is a lot darker, which I've made on purpose, so it's more obvious that this is a point of focus and that it's going to start banging with the arrows on the sides of it. So after this, all we've all done, you might end up with something like an animatic, and this is useful because it helps you pre-visualise your scene a bit better. Also it means you can, after importing all the photos, reorganise them if you want to change the flow or the editing, and equally it's useful just to work out what the feel of the film is going to look like, and if you add audio alongside it in very basic sort of things like ambient noise or sound effects, that can equally be useful to work out sort of things you might want for your film. and it helps get the other team started after they can see that. Anyway, that's my masterclass on storyboarding.